Hello, everybody. This is the Waste Reduction Lecture. So, I wanted to start off with a question asking, is waste disposal a problem? Now, is throwing away things, fundamentally a problem? The answer is probably not, right? Is our world ever going to look like this picture from the movie WALL-E? No. We have enough space for putting stuff, right? We have enough places where we could potentially make new landfills. Um, but the more stuff we create, or the more stuff we create, the more stuff we have to throw away. And one of the problems with being as consumer focused as the United States is that's one of the reasons why we have such a high carbon dioxide footprint, right? So the more we can reduce the amount of waste that we create, we can actually reduce the amount of carbon that we're then putting up into the atmosphere. I think the biggest issue with waste disposal is where do we put it, like what items we throw away, and by what method do we do that. So one of the things that one of the I think most terrible things that go into landfills that shouldn't be going to landfills is organic material, basically yard waste, because we can compost this, right? Yard waste, grass clippings, leaves, branches can all be naturally decomposed into organic material and basically turn into dirt or compost. There's lots of facilities that do it nationwide, but lots of people have a compost pile in their backyard. But what we see across the U.S., about 18% of the trash that's thrown away is actually yard waste. Now, there's certain places that have banned yard waste, so here in Wisconsin, we can't actually, it's illegal to throw away yard waste. All the green states here have that yard waste ban in the trash, right? Then the gray states have absolutely no ban on that. And what we see is essentially these are the states that don't have easy access to things like free city landfills, or I should say compost piles. So it's harder for people to compost their yard waste rather than it is here in Wisconsin. It's actually pretty easy. Now, other ways we can reduce the amount of waste we create is just by never producing it in the first place. Buying durable products that we don't need to replace as often. And buying in bulk or buying things with smaller packaging. And this is why I asked you to, in the discussion, talk about an item that has a ridiculous amount of packaging. There's, this banana, I think, here is a great example of something that just shouldn't exist, right? That banana peel is just fine, and it will, decompose in a matter of weeks in a compost pile, and instead they're making a very long lasting piece of trash with that individually wrapped banana. Buying in bulk actually saves on the amount of plastic, basically. So think of like a big jug of soap, of dish soap or laundry soap. The bigger the jug is, it's actually per weight of soap that you're buying, or per volume of soap that you're buying, it uses less plastic. So you shouldn't buy a bunch of tiny containers, because that's going to be a lot of plastic. You should buy one big container, and that will save a lot on the amount of plastic that you're responsible essentially for creating. Another thing that is really becoming more common in grocery stores, which you can actually do, is bring containers that are pre-weighed, so then you can buy like in bulk produce and not have to put it in a plastic bag, and so they can just like subtract off the weight of your little container, and then you won't get charged for the weight of your container. These are just some little ideas that you can do, but could overall have a big impact. Now, one of the I think two biggest things that people talk about are, are disposable diapers better or are cloth diapers better? And are plastic bag diapers better or are plastic bags or paper bag or a reusable bag better? As far as the reusable diapers, cloth diapers versus the disposable ones, what it kind of generally comes out to is if you're worried about producing a lot of solid waste and you're worried about that waste escaping the landfill, then you should probably go with cloth diapers. But if you're worried about global warming and creating carbon dioxide, you should probably use disposable diapers, because cloth diapers, the cotton in them, it actually takes a lot of fossil fuels to grow cotton, to harvest cotton, and the machinery to make that. And then it takes a lot of electricity to wash those diapers, dry those diapers in your dryer, and then get ready to use them again, right? So, it's kind of like choose what you want to create. Do you want to create a bunch of solid waste that will stay in the landfill forever, or do you want to create more carbon dioxide that could potentially cause more global warming? As far as the plastic bag issue, though, what we see is there's quite a big controversy over this, and I think this map actually shows this quite well. So California and Hawaii are really the only states that have completely banned plastic bags. There's a variety of states that have plastic bag taxes. The city of Chicago has that, where and they just charge you like a nickel a bag, and it actually works really well. It's really cut down on plastic bag use in the city of Chicago since they started that maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I can't really remember, but it's the dark gray states here are states that have actually passed laws preventing future laws being made about plastic bag like bans or taxes, which is just ridiculous to me. What I've seen is that plastic bags can be extremely damaging to the environment and really unsightly. I have spent some time in Peru. I've traveled in other developing countries, and where they don't have a strong like landfill and trash infrastructure, plastic bags really add up and can pile up in lots of places. I remember one time I was in the country of Jordan, and they had there was kind of a lot of places all over the country. There was just big bushes that were completely covered in plastic bags, and you would be driving along highways and there would just be like plastic bags all along the highway, and it was just really sad for me to see that, because those things don't go away, right? I think across the world, though, there's getting to be more and more plastic bag bans or taxes or ways in which we're trying to reduce the amount of plastic bags. And so the question is, how reusable, what am I actually saving by using different types of bags? So what we've got is the LDPE. This is low density polyethylene. You've got paper bags. There's high density polyethylene. These are, those common kind of reusable shopping bags that are made out of like a woven kind of plastic, and then let's say like a cotton kind of like a tote bag thing. So these are kind of our choices that we have. So we know that low density polyethylene bags are wasteful. They don't last very long, and they're disposable. People just kind of throw them out. So where's the problem with that lies with the resources that are used to make it. The plastic will last basically forever in a landfill, or if it escapes from the waste stream, and then the carbon that is used that is produced via the production process of it. So what can we do to basically lower our environmental input, our footprint, based on our bag choice? So if we look at this graph, what we see is this is basically how much carbon dioxide do these different things do, right? So a high density polyethylene bag actually doesn't produce that much carbon dioxide. Now, if you were to actually look at a low density polyethylene bag, it would be super, super tiny, right? It would be essentially nothing, right? Because think about how much just one single bag costs, or in the terms of resources, right? Essentially nothing. When it takes, to weigh a single high density polyethylene bag, it weighs a whole lot more. So there's a lot more resources that go into that HDPE bag. But that being said, it's relatively low amount of carbon dioxide that gets put into the air. Paper bags then are actually higher for that. And polypropylene, another type of plastic bag that is common, actually produces a lot of global warming potential, so a lot of carbon dioxide. Now, cotton is actually 10 times the polypropylene bag, so it'd be way off the charts here. And again, that reason that cotton bags are producing a lot of carbon dioxide has to do with the fossil fuels that are required to plant, harvest, and process that. And then the land use that the growing of the cotton, that because you turn natural habitat into farmland, that creates some carbon dioxide. So when we look at how often, what type of bag we should be using, a paper bag is better than plastic if you use it 4 times. Can you use a paper bag 4 times? And then, I don't know, depending on how heavy your groceries are. A cotton bag, you would need to use 173 times. Now, I think that's certainly true, or easy to do. You could probably use a tote 173 times to go to the grocery store. But these like tougher type of plastic bags, the reusable plastic bags, really only take like 14 times before they become better, less pollution producing than the low density polyethylene bag. So when we go back to this question, which bag should you be using? It's probably this bag. That this will, after about 14 uses, will get you to the point where you're actually saving on carbon dioxide and resource uses and the pollution that you're causing. So, beyond just the reduction of use, then we oftentimes see that logo: reduce, reuse, recycle. Well, reuse of waste, I'm not really going to talk that much about. That's just basically repurposing older things to use in different ways. And I don't really, you can look on Etsy for that. I don't think it's that important to spend time talking about that. But the economics of recycling are actually really interesting. And what we see is that we oftentimes think of, we should recycle everything. Absolutely every plastic that we use, every piece of aluminum, every piece of steel that we use should be recycled. And now, some people, like a lot of people would agree with that, but there are certain things that just kind of aren't really worth recycling, at least from an economic sense. So one of the biggest ways that we get people to recycle is by putting basically taxes on things or deposits on things, and then we get them back. So aluminum cans, for example. Now, if you live in certain states will, so Michigan, if you buy a can of pop that normally costs 50 cents in other states, in Michigan it would cost 60 cents. Then when you bring that can back to a recycling center, they would give you 10 cents back. So people, they're motivated by their pocketbook, and what we see is Michigan has extremely high rates of this returning aluminum cans that they get recycled. All these other states in this graph are at 5 cents, and we can see the rates of recycling are a lot lower. The U.S. right now is varies around between 40 and 50%. When we look at different materials, what we see is glass is actually relatively useful to recycle. It's good to recycle glass because while we are not going to run out of sand, basically that's what we make glass out of, we do use a lot of energy, right? The glass furnaces that are used to make glass are take sand, melt it down, and then form it into a bottle, or whatever is the glass is used for. If you already have glass, then it's a lot lower process that uses about 50% of the energy to make that new glass. So it saves a lot. Paper, what we see is that 40% of it is recycled. Aluminum has, it varies by state, but we see somewhere around the total amount of aluminum that we recycled is about 60%. Now that is looking at like industrial uses of aluminum, where before I was talking about beverage containers basically. But aluminum is probably the best thing to recycle because about 25% of the total electrical production of the United States is used to make new aluminum. And the process uses just a ton of electricity. If you already have aluminum, then you can just melt it down, and it only takes about 5% of the energy as opposed to the full making of the new aluminum. Recently, though, we've seen a really big upset in how the economics of recycling have changed. What we see is, Americans produce probably the most amount of trash and paper, plastic. Most particularly, I'm talking about paper and plastic because America recycles its own aluminum because it is so economically such a benefit. The thing is, what we in the past have done with our paper and plastic is basically ship it over to China. The thing is, in 2019, China basically said, we don't really want any more of these lower quality recyclables. We're not going to be importing any more plastic, paper, glass, or cardboard. So all of a sudden there isn't a market, and we have a huge amount of a lot of these recyclables that basically are not getting recycled now in the U.S. And it's kind of sad that we have to ship our recyclables all the way over to China for that to be an economically profitable business. But I think the market will just have to adjust to China not taking on so much of that and remaking it and using it for their own stuff. But we'll have to see how that happens in the next couple of years. So really what we see is that the amount of recycling that is done is really tied to economics. So cardboard is an example where somewhere around 70% of it is recycled, and that really depends on how much wood pulp is available to make the cardboard versus how much old cardboard is available to make the new cardboard, right? And what we see is, depending on how the supply and demand goes, when the price of cardboard is $125 per ton, new cardboard is actually cheaper to make. So we see that the box makers essentially just go to wood pulp and start, not finding new wood sources to use, as opposed to recycling cardboard. So it's a really weird thing. The more we recycle and the more we use that old cardboard, the more we recycle that old cardboard, the less we have of it available, which makes it more worth more, and then people will then switch to using like wood, cut down wood. So the more we recycle means the more wood that will be used to make this cardboard. So it's this really kind of weird tension that doesn't necessarily make intuitive sense. But if we see like where we're at for recycling, there's a variety of things that do really well. So like auto batteries are extremely high. About 95% of auto batteries, car batteries, are recycled. Car batteries have a lot of nasty chemicals in them. And so there's been some regulations where if you ever go to buy a car battery, what you'll see is there's a price, and then there's a core charge, and then the regular price. Basically, this is just a screenshot. I went to Advanced Auto Parts, and if you just want to buy a new battery, then that's it. It would cost $181. But you can save $22 if you bring in your old battery. So it's kind of just like that deposit thing. And one of the reasons they do this is because there's a lot of really good recyclables inside that auto battery that are worth a lot of money, but also there's a lot of nasty chemicals. So these core charges are really, really working well because people really want to save that $22. Depending on the battery, that core charge is different, but somewhere it's around $20, and that's enough to motivate people to have recycling rates at such high rates. What I would say is, what I try to do is try to be as conscious as I can of my purchases. Now, generally, if I do find a product that does have a lot of packaging, but I was gonna buy it anyway, I will probably buy it. But if I do have a choice, if I see two brands of eggs and one has a styrofoam carton and one has a cardboard carton, I'm gonna go for that cardboard carton because I know that even if I don't recycle that cardboard, which I generally do, but even if I don't, it does it would at least at minimum decompose into organic matter in the landfill. All right, so with that, I hope you learned a little bit more about recycling, and I'll see you all later.